So, what is the Watcher? The Watcher is a character who was added last in Spire's development cycle. She was added for the 1.0 release of the Spire, and I think had the most player feedback in shaping her playstyle and deck of cards. She's ended up in an interesting place because of that. A very consistent powerhouse in the right hands, with a really powerful toolkit overall. Watcher starts with 4 defends and 4 strikes, as well as 1 Eruption and 1 Vigilance. Eruption dealing 9 damage and entering Wrath, upgrading to 1 cost, which is very strong. And Vigilance providing, honestly, a little bit too much block and entering Calm stance. Vigilance is valued perfectly to allow you to get through Act 1 encounters, essentially without taking damage usually, barring the elite fights. Watcher's real strength lies in her ability to double the damage of her attacks with Wrath stance, which allows for enormous damage output, even just with basic strikes, to the point where on lower ascensions, it is reasonable to defeat Act 3 using just your strikes and defends with Eruption. On Ascension 20, you need a little bit more than that, but not that much more. Because of Wrath, Watcher is able to get multiplied value out of anything else that adds to her attack damage as well. So plus strength becomes exceedingly valuable on Watcher because you can double that. And vulnerable becomes exceedingly valuable on Watcher because it's a lot better than 50% more damage. You multiply the bonus damage from Wrath and Vuln, so 50% on top of double equals triple. Triple damage for Wrath and Vuln. That means the vulnerable adds exactly as much damage as the Wrath did in the first place, so it's like a second Wrath. And yes, for that reason, Crush Joints is a very good Watcher common. Let's take a look at the commons here. Bowling Bash. We'll just look at each one and kind of give some brief thoughts on it. Not going to make a second tier list. I've already done a Watcher tier list, and you can consult that video for very similar things to what I'm about to say, but I do want to kind of review the opinion on each card. Bowling Bash. Surprisingly good early. I like Bowling Bash a lot because it is almost perfectly valued to kill one of the 3 Sentries elites unupgraded if you're in Wrath. It just donks them. And it's very good in a number of other fights too. Gremlin Leader, Slavers, Collector, Bronze Automaton. There's a number of good fights for this in Act 2. It can be a shocking amount of damage. So I rate Bowling Bash pretty highly. I think it's quite good. Consecrate is the other really good way to deal with area fights. 0 cost, 5 to all. This one needs an upgrade pretty badly to make it 8 to all. That's pretty good. Crescendo, Retaining Wrath. I don't rate this too highly, but it's definitely nice, especially with an upgrade. Wrath that you can keep in your hand for a while is definitely good. I think I sometimes prefer Tranquility over Crescendo, but neither I rate that highly, as they're just a one-time use stance swap. But again, both of these are a lot better if they come with a free upgrade. So if you've got a Toxic Egg or just happen to see one in Act 2 with an upgrade, consider strongly Crescendo or Tranquility. They get a lot better if you have stance change powers too. But I'm not really happy about Crescendo or Tranquility in Act 1. I would probably take Crescendo first card though, over skipping. I have to imagine I take this over skip. Do I take Tranquility over skip? Deeply unclear. I'd have to look at the card reward. That's kind of a crazy, I don't know. Very unlikely that I would take Tranquility in Act 1. Crush Joints, this card's great. It's relatively easy to activate the effect of the last card being a skill. Good habit to, once you have this card in your deck, end your turn with your defend cards, so just so that you can have this active at the beginning of next turn, as that conditional effect does cross between turns. If you end your turn by playing a skill, then play Crush Joints as the first card on your next turn, it'll be active. This card definitely needs an upgrade for that extra turn of Vuln. Cut Through Fate. Probably the best of the commons. Like, no questions asked. This card is absurd. Does good enough damage. 7 is not amazing, but it's definitely good enough with Watcher's ability to stack damage bonuses. I would say, with some experience in this game now, that the value of Scry is about 0.75 draw. Scry is really strong, and so Scry 2 plus Draw 1 is really powerful. This draws effectively more than 2. And then the upgrade adds 2 more damage and 1 more Scry, making it a ludicrous amount of deck control while also putting damage on the target. Really, really good card. She cutting an old phone cord. It appears to be a burning thread of string or yarn. The cord of fate. The phone cord of fate. Empty body. Stance control is nice. This is not the best empty card in my opinion. Probably one of the worst ones actually, but it works okay if you need an extra block and you want a way to leave your current stance. I don't mind empty body that much. I think Empty Fist is a bit better. Does good damage, really good damage if upgraded. And lets you exit your stance. Can be a little bit awkward sometimes because you want to attack but you don't want to leave Wrath. But still usually worth it. If you're playing Empty Fist in Wrath, usually your target is dead. Yeah, it's a really good Act 1 card for that upgrade. 28 damage in Wrath stance, plus no longer be in Wrath stance. It's great. Evaluate. Not very good. Shuffling an Insight into your draw pile makes this effectively like a Shrug It Off that's delayed. The Insight draws 2, but you add it to your draw pile, so that's -1 draw. And then the Evaluate is also 1 draw. So you end up in the same spot as a Shrug It Off, but delayed. You can do some things with it, like have more cards in hand with Insight, or there's some shenanigans in general you can perform with Insight on Watcher, but for the most part, Insights are really not that good. And the cards that make Insights are not that good. So I typically don't like Insight on Watcher. Evaluate is noteworthy for having a +4 upgrade on the card, which does make it more worth taking, again, with Toxic Egg. Yes, this would be a very good card on Ironclad. I agree. Flurry of Blows. Highly regarded by many. I actually don't like this card that much. Unless I already have some kind of attack spam incentive. If I already have a Talk to the Hand, or if I already have a Ninja Relic, then sure, I'll take 1 or 2 of these. But I find that Flurry of Blows is a card that can take up valuable hand space, takes up valuable draws in your first deck cycle, and has a significant cost against the Time Eater and against the Heart. 2 fights where the Watcher needs quite a bit of help, actually. Time Eater and Heart. So for those reasons, I don't like Flurry of Blows early very much. It can be decent damage, but I would much rather take different options, usually. But again, that's different if I have a relic that works with it. It's a great relic activator, allowing you to return this to your hand many times and play many attacks for free on your turn. Are Fortress and Talk to the Hand the Watcher's only late-game block sources? Not the only ones, no. Though they are the most convenient ones, as you note. Other things that work really well for blocking the late game include Wallop, Wave of the Hand, or any weak source. Use a Sash Whip if you have to. Spirit Shield can make a ton of block. And then if you can get Dexterity from any source, and there are a couple good ones, including the very notable Duality. Whenever you play an attack, gain 1 temporary Dexterity. This thing is better than Kunai for Watcher, in my opinion. And there are a lot of cards that work really well with it. Very notably, Halt is obscene with any amount of Dexterity. This can be a late-game block source, even with no dex. This is 0 cost block 18 if you're in Wrath. But also cards like Third Eye, Prostrate, and especially Deceive Reality also scales extremely well with Dexterity. Fasting with a number of things can give you that dex as well. So there's some ideas for you, but there are definitely other ways to block beyond just Mental Fortress and Talk to the Hand. You can even get really creative with stuff like Nirvana and Like-Water. I don't usually have these be part of our block plan, but sometimes the stars align. In general, these are the much weaker powers, though. Don't recommend. Anyway, back to our commons. So, Flurry of Blows, don't like that much. You won't see me taking this very often. Flying Sleeves, not bad. Doesn't do very much damage, but the retain means you can always line it up with your Wrath. Definitely wants an upgrade for that +4. Pretty good if you've got added strength. Pretty good with Talk to the Hand, because it hits twice. Not that bad. I don't mind one of these early. It's not great, though. Follow-up. I typically prefer. This is good damage at 0 cost. You're always playing attacks on Watcher, so the activation is pretty trivial. Has a good upgrade, too, at +4. Definitely like Follow-Up a lot early. Yes, this is definitely a I really need damage and there's an elite coming up card. Otherwise, you'd rather have a Cut Through Fate or a Follow-Up or a Crush Joints or a Carve Reality. Alt. Not an Act 1 card, but a powerful common. Again, very good with Dexterity, very good with Retain or Pyramid, very good with lots of Wrath and Draw. So great in a Rushdown deck, too. Just Lucky. Pretty bad on its own. Would never take this first reward unless I've got really no other choice. But because of all its interactions, becomes really good with certain relics. Kunai, Shuriken, good Weave Activator, good with Talk to the Hand, good with the Third Eye Relic, good with many, many relics. It's just a really good card for activating other effects. And so the more of those you have, the better this card gets. And you can definitely have a deck where you want many of these. Great with Fasting, too. Do I think they went a bit over the top with upgrades on Watcher? A little bit, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of +4s. I certainly don't think Empty Fist needed to be +5. This was originally 8 to 12, and then they buffed it. I don't know why this got buffed. I did not think it needed a buff. But, that's all right. How good is Scry? I said earlier, I'll say it again. I value Scry at 0.75 draw. That's how good. It's pretty good. Pressure points. I wish this card weren't a meme, but it's mostly just a meme. The main problem with pressure points is that you can't guarantee another one. It also doesn't scale with stances, which is Watcher's whole thing, so it's pretty bad. Prostrate. I like this card. Zero cost block is pretty good, and I like this as a first Mantra card. Mantra is a little bit slept on as a mechanic on Watcher. It's really powerful if you can get it to work, as both a damage multiplier and an energy generator. And Prostrate is a great place to start. So I like Prostrate okay. Yes, Meditate is the best Mantra card. I agree with that too. Protect, I don't like very much. Retaining large amount of block. There's a couple fights where this is useful, but in general, you would really rather not spend your draw on this. So I don't like Protect very much. Maybe with a free upgrade. Maybe with a Snecko start, but I'm not going to be boss swapping very much. More on that later. I really don't like Protect very much. Sash Whip. This card's fine. Weaken is good. On Watcher especially. Multi-layered defense is the key to victory for Watcher. And so weakness is a good layer of defense. This requires playing an attack. That's not too hard. There's not a lot of other weak cards on this character, so it's noteworthy for that alone. Does need an upgrade, though. Yeah, Wave of the Hand is so much better, though. Definitely. Definitely. But you don't always get offered a Wave of the Hand, so sometimes take this card instead, because you're not going to get a Wave of the Hand, and it's better to have this than to have nothing. So, consider it. Third Eye. Spectacular card. 3 Scry is good, but 5 Scry is ridiculous. So this card helps you set up future turns, all while blocking. Just really, really good card in general. Really big numbers on that. Yeah, the best normal block card for Watcher. Although, do you consider this to be a normal block card? Because this is also a very good normal block card. Oh, and this Deceive Reality is also part of the reason Protect is kind of garbage. Right, like I can pay 2 to block for 12, or I can pay 1 to block for 4 plus 1 to block for 12. So pay 2 to block for 16 with some more fun utility on it. Protect just kind of loses that. So really outshone by this card. We already talked about Tranquility, so that's the commons. Usually you're looking to pick some damage, you know, Cut Through Fate, Crush Joints, Consecrate, Follow Up, Empty Fist, or the cards, and Bowling Bash, the cards I'm looking to see on floor 1. Would I consider Scry from Foresight at parity with Ordinary Draw? It's pretty good. Foresight in general, this power is really good. For a number of reasons, but I don't think it's as good as One Draw. It might be better than Mid-Turn Scry, though. But yeah, this card is ridiculous. For a good time, use a Duplication Potion on an upgraded Foresight in the Heart Fight. Scry 8 at the start of every turn. Choose your hand to fight the Heart with. Good time. Strongly recommend. See, do I want to touch on all the uncommons here? I guess I will. Briefly here. Battle Hymn, great Act 1 card. Becomes a problem later on. This can definitely lead to hand clog if you cannot afford to play the smites, but it's also a good way to get damage in a compact Watcher deck. Definitely shines in the elites of Act 1 more than anything. I don't like the upgrade on it very much, specifically because of that hand clog problem. In Act 2 and Act 3, you really don't want to be drawing this on turn 1. You want draw, damage, and block, and this ain't nothing of those three immediately. So that's mostly the problem with this, is that it's a do nothing this turn card. But its generation of smites is definitely powerful. Typically, I'd prefer to be able to make that smite immediately with something like Carve Reality. And I think that's in general a theme for Watcher cards. The good ones allow you to get value out of future turns or the current turn. And the bad ones, or the weaker ones, only allow you to get value out of a future turn. So Carve Reality is retained damage or burst damage, whereas this is only long-term retained damage. And that's where Sands of Time kicks butt too. You can pay the price upfront on this card for damage right away, or you can wait to get it cheaper. The fact that it's flexible is what makes it strong, compared to Windmill Strike, where you have to wait for the damage. This one's not as good. Yeah, in general, Watcher won't be taking that many turns in a fight. That makes a card like Collect really bad. I really dislike this card. Put a Miracle into your hand at the start of your next X turns. Collect is particularly weird because it's one of those X cost cards where you don't actually want to do X equals 100, which would be really fun and cool on the good X cost cards like Tempest for 100 or Whirlwind for 100 or Skewer for 100 are all awesome. You win the fight. Amazing. But if you play Collect for 100, you've just wasted 100 energy. It's a sad time. There are some niche uses for it. It's okay with Dead Branch. And even then, not that good. It's okay with Chemical X, but you shouldn't be buying Chemical X on Watchers, so don't recommend. A card I very, very rarely take. Conclude. Very strong early. Falls off pretty hard, though. I recommend a maximum of 1 Conclude in your deck. Definitely a maximum of 1. Conclude's biggest problem is that it competes with 2 other cards that are better, that also end your turn, which are Meditate and, of course, the almighty Vault. Both of those cards additionally have the price of ending your turn. Conclude's turn ending also means you can't leave Wrath after playing it, although usually the enemies are dead, hence the name Conclude. And you can't double it, which is a mild inconvenience, but it does so much freaking damage that it's often worth it. I mean, I super take this card early, but if I have some decent attacks already, I'll probably ignore it. But yeah, I mean, it does so much damage against Gremlinob that you have to take it. Also very good against Slime Boss. Or Sentries, or, well, really anything. Let's go in Captain Cream Pie. Welcome. Congrats for getting to the Act 3 boss on 820. You'll get there eventually. Your Fairy Potion didn't go off. Did you take the Mark of the Bloom? Did you upgrade all your cards? Because, yeah, the Fairy is healing, and the Mark of the Bloom prevents healing. All of the healing. Anything that would increase your health is healing, unfortunately. A lot of people initially interpret it as only the healing you get from resting at a rest site, but no, it's anything that would be healing. Add another name to the pile. Yeah, you're far from the first player to die in this way, so don't feel too bad. Many, many casualties alongside you. All right, now where was I? This card, great. Better than Protect. Already talked about it a bit. Great with Dexterity, too. Empty Mind, very good. Often can be part of an infinite combo for Watcher, who is very good at infinite combos, particularly with her uncommon cards. And this is one of the core pieces to that. The other core pieces involve 1-cost Enter Calm cards, which are also uncommons for the most part. This one's draw 3, exit stance, upgraded. Pretty dang good. Pretty dang good card. If you're leaving Calm, then this is draw and energy, which is part of why it's so strong. And if you're leaving Wrath, then it helps you find block. So its flexibility is key to why this card is so useful. Fasting. I like this card a lot. It's one of the ways Watcher can scale to the end game. A little bit of strength is enormous damage output for this character, and a little bit of dexterity is enormous block output. To make fasting as strong as possible, either negate the debuff it provides, you can use orange pellets or an artifact charge, or simply use cheap cards. Highly recommend Prostrate and Flurry of Blows and Just Lucky and stuff like that. And then just kill everything with your superpowered zero-cost stuff. You can also use things like Deviform or Miracles in general. Fear No Evil, really strong card. It's one of those one-cost comm entries we discussed, so it's a potential infinite combo piece. Although it does have a condition of the enemy attacking. Although usually if the enemy is not attacking, you can afford to wait one more turn until they are attacking, so it's not that big of a downside. Decent damage too. Not amazing, but decent. Foreign Influence. I really like this card. Better upgraded, because you can make a 2 or 3 cost attack and then be 0 cost. It's flexible. Notable for being able to generate Hand of Greed, so you can actually make money from this card. But it's definitely fun. Foresight, one of the better powers for Watcher. Scrying at the start of each turn lets you avoid bricking your draw, lets you find exactly what you need. It's just really, really strong. Only downside to this one is that it has no immediate impact, but even then it's really good. Indignation. One of the less good Wrath cards. The conditionality is kind of cool. Being a source of Vuln is definitely nice. If I have no other Wrath early, I'll probably take it. Inner Peace. Very good. Another part of an infinite combo. This one either puts you in calm, or if you're already in calm, draws more cards. Both of those functions are very powerful. So this card is quite strong. Like Water, one of the weaker powers for Watcher. The value on this is pretty enormous. So if you have good stance control, 5 or 7 block per turn, I mean, you compare this to Metallicize, and it's a lot stronger for 1 power. Can be quite good in Act 1, but in general, fails to be as useful as something like Mental Fortress. Meditate is amazing. The upgraded version of this just draws 2 cards from the discard pile, puts them into your hand for next turn. Then you enter Calm and end your turn. Amazing for setting up power turns. You meditate your Eruption and a big damage card and you kill everything, or you meditate your setup cards in some way, or your draw to be able to get into an infinite combo position, but perhaps. The uses for this are endless, just like Hologram on Defect. It's heckin' strong. Definitely one of our most taken cards. Same with Mental Fortress, ideally paired with Meditate here. Block per stance change, a ridiculous amount. 4 and then 6. You can stance change quite a few times per turn. Sometimes an infinite number of times per turn. And this gives you tons and tons and tons of block. You get a Watcher 2 or 3 of these, you block the heart, no problem. Goddess Dionysus, thanks for 7 months. But who watches the Watcher? You're going to be watching the Watcher. Watching the Watcher skip Nirvana. Block per scry. Not that much of it either. It's got a smaller value than Mental Fortress, and you're not often scrying that much that Nirvana is very good block. I find it very rare that this ends up being particularly useful, as there's only about 6 or 7 cards that actually say scry on them. Got 3 commons though, right? Cut Through Fate, Just Lucky, and Third Eye. And there's Foresight. I actually remember what else has scry. Is that it? 4? There's really not that many, is what I'm trying to say. Perseverance. I wish this card was better. It's really not that good, though. It has some very niche uses. So it's not completely garbage, but it's definitely amongst your worst options. The core problem with Perseverance is that you're either playing it or you're scaling it. You can't do both in the same turn. Unless you meditate it. If you return it to your hand after playing it, you can do both, but that's rather hard to do. So do note the synergy here between Meditate and Perseverance. But yeah, this card starts at too low a block value, and you end up in this weird feedback loop that sucks, where the enemy is attacking you for more than you can block for, so you play your Perseverance because you need block right now, but then you're not scaling the Perseverance, so later in the fight, you will not have your block, and then you die. It's just bad. It doesn't do what you need it to do, which is get you out of the situation. Pray. This card's a bit weird. Don't consider this that good as far as mantra cards, but it does have some niche use. 4 is quite a bit of mantra, and the insights are not horrible, but it's not that good. If you have other mantra, though, this is well worth considering, just so you have more sources of it. Reach Heaven. I like Carve Reality more. This one puts the card into your draw pile and has a larger upfront cost. You have a bigger upfront cost and a more delayed payoff to get a bigger payoff. And as usual, I prefer the cards where you can get the payoff immediately. That said, if you can draw to the Through Violence with something like a Cut Through Fate, then you can have an immediate payoff. But yeah, I'd rather do less and do it now, because now is more. Rushdown. Do I really need to comment on this card? There's a lot of nonsense you can do with this. It's very strong because it's a conditional draw 2, upgrades to 0 cost. Yeah, it's good. Sometimes we'll skip it, but a lot of the times you want 2 or 3 of these. It's a very good card. Sanctity. It's okay. It says draw on it. That's good. Blocks for a reasonable amount. That's pretty good. The draw is conditional, so you have to be playing around it, but it's not bad. Yeah, 3 is probably overkill, but I could see wanting a third, not because you need to draw 6, but more because you need one of the rushdowns in play as quickly as possible. And the time. This is great. Very good early on. This card absolutely destroys Act 1. And if you can pay the cost up front, it's not too bad either. Great with Snecko Eye, too. Signature Move. This card is hilarious. The typical Watcher playstyle very quickly reaches a deck state where this card is not viable. However, if you get it early, this card can totally be a build-around. The damage payoff is so large on Signature Move that you can definitely make it your core strat. Yeah, Pressure Point Synergy. In Divinity, it does 120 damage. There's definitely some silliness. Like, add Pen Nib, you're looking at over 200 damage. If Clash was good, it would, yeah. Well, if Clash did 40 damage, I'd be okay with not playing it sometimes. Yeah, Signature Move is powerful. A little hard to use, but very powerful. One of my favorite runs of all time was a custom mode run. We started with 5 signature moves, and I ended up with 7 by the end. We were using them the whole time to kill everything. It was great. I had like Warcry to get them out of my hand. I had various mechanisms to remove them from my hand when they were in my hand, so I could get them one at a time and kill things. It was great. I'm pretty sure I took a forethought so that I could remove them from my hand. It was a good time. Anyway. Simmering Fury. This is okay. Next turn draw is cool. Next turn wrath is cool. I like what the card does, but the usual problem, doesn't do anything the turn you play it. Makes it a bit niche. Good Act 1 card, though. Good first additional wrath source. Nice with Meditate, definitely. Cool with Foresight, too. Study. Awkward AF. I don't know why this thing costs 2. You could very easily make this cost 1 and it would still be bad. And you can do that by upgrading it, and it is still bad, usually. Like I said, insights are awkward. They're crap against Heart. They're crap against Time Eater. They clog your hand, potentially. Does fun stuff with Dead Branch, but has an even more than usual delayed effect because doesn't do anything until the turn after you play it. The turn after you play it, it puts something in your draw pile. You have to then draw that card. Oh, and that card has retain. So if you want to use a retain, you need another turn to retain it. Then you can play it. It's too many turns you have to set up for this to actually work. Just like real education, the time to pay off is way too long. Swivel. Actually pretty good. If you've got a 2 or more cost attack, then this is 8 block for 1 or 0 cost, depending on how you look at it. I like retain. I like swivel, rather. It's particularly good with Snecko Eye, because it itself is randomized, and then you can use it to fix your Snecko cost. Talk to the Hand. Amazing card. Applies a permanent debuff. Doesn't say it's permanent on the card, but worth pointing out, this lasts for the whole fight after you do it. The heart never purges this effect, although Time Eater will, Awaken One Dying will remove it. The big thing about Talk to the Hand that I will say is that you cannot have this be your only block source. Easy mistake to make. Take 4 of these, you feel like you're invincible, nothing can hurt you. And then you get to Donu and Deka, and they kill your face. So yeah, you need some other card to block, because Donu and Deka will kill you. Bronze Automaton could too. If you are just relying on this as block. There's ways around that too, of course. Like Wave of the Hand. Pair, of course, with Tantrum. Again, I probably don't need to comment too much on this card. I would say conceptually, though, Tantrum is a really good example of why in a deck builder like this, you should never, ever design a card that says, put this card back in the draw pile. Because that is broken. It is broken to put a card back into the draw pile after you play it. Plain and simple. The other stuff the card does is almost irrelevant. And what it does do is actually pretty good, which is hit a bunch of times and then put you in Rat Stance. It's great. It's very, very good. Ludicrously good. Definitely take it Act 1 or really any time. Also really good. Wallop. Because it is block and damage at the same time, and being in Wrath scales both aspects. So the more damage you do with this, the more block you get. Triple damage Wallop, you're blocking for 36. Just really good. Also really good is Wave of the Hand. It's not that good in Act 1, but very quickly becomes insane. Each time you get block, apply 1 week to all enemies. I will point out, keep an eye out for relics that give you block every turn, such as Cloak Clasp or Orichalcum or Thread Needle. They all make this card very good. But this is really good at removing artifact from enemies and really good at just weakening enemies forever. It's not uncommon to play Wave of the Hand, and then the boss is weakened for 20 turns. Easy peasy. Weave. I like Weave a lot more than Flurry of Blows, because I like returning to your hand after Scry. You can even discard it with a Scry effect from your draw pile, and then it comes back to your hand immediately. So I typically prefer Weave over Flurry of Blows, but still don't like it unless I have Attack Relic Synergy, typically. It's a nice boomerang card. Wheel Kick. Really good attack. It's a bit expensive, but the damage is large by Watcher standards. 15 upgraded 20, and it draws 2 cards immediately, which is also very strong. So Wheel Kick is great. Expensive, but great. Windmill Strike is not great, but sometimes it's good enough. Retaining scaling damage is a nice way to get a win con against certain troublesome opponents. Good against Act 1 elites and Act 1 bosses. Good against Book of Stabbing in Act 2, as well as Act 2 bosses. Typically, you prefer something like Sands of Time, but this can get the job done. And that can be good enough, particularly if you've got Necronomicon, but Watcher has a lot of Necronomicon payoffs, so again, not that important. But yeah, it has some utility. It can even be okay against the heart sometimes, but typically you prefer something else. Worship. Gives you a bunch of mantra, upgraded version retains. Pretty niche card. Main problem with Warship is that if you're entering Divinity purely off of Warship, you're doing so at an energy loss, which is not that good. You want to gain energy from the Divinity, not lose it. But it's a nice way to finish getting into Divinity after playing a couple of prostrates or something. And it's, yes, a very good meditate target and a very good omniscience target. So don't often take this, but it's okay. And a dad joke for the crowd, courtesy of Matt. What is the Watcher's favorite type of rum? Tantrum. No refunds. Wreath of Flame. This is kind of interesting. Your next attack deals 5 or upgraded 8 additional damage. Bit awkward to use this card, but it does have some noteworthy interactions. One is that the effect lasts between turns. Doesn't matter how long it is until your next attack. So you can potentially play Wreath of Flame multiple times to make one really big attack. It adds a lot of damage to any attack that hits multiple times. So it can do really cool things with Expunger or Tantrum or Flying Sleeves or Bowling Bash or any AoE card like Conclude or Consecrate. It makes Consecrate a lot stronger too. And then, of course, there is Ragnarok. Lastly, if you use it on Wallop, making the Wallop do more damage also makes the Wallop generate more block. So Wallop plus Wreath of Flame makes more block. So there's actually quite a few little interactions with this that are pretty strong. That said, it's usually not that good of a card, so I'm typically not taking a Wreath of Flame. Okay, on to the rares. Most of Watcher's rares are really conditional and kind of bad. But we'll briefly mention the use case of them, as well as the ones that are definitely good all the time. Alpha. Shuffles a beta into the draw pile. That beta then shuffles an omega into the draw pile. Omega is 3 costs, saying do 50 damage to all enemies every turn. Typically, you want to just kill things with your attacks and not spend time setting up. That said, this can be a win con in boss scaling fights that you don't have an answer for. If you don't have a way to solve your Act 2 boss, then Alpha, Beta, Omega can do it for you. And there are ways to make this work in the end game. I have even done Omega as a way to deal heart damage. And if you've got Omniscience, it can get really silly, actually. One of my favorite runs of all time used a chain of Omnisciences to get 4 copies of Omega in play on turn 1, if I remember correctly. Passively dealing 200 damage per turn to all enemies. And I just blocked for a couple turns. But that's really more a statement about Omniscience than it is Alpha. More on that in a moment. So typically, very low-rated card here. Blasphemy is a fair bit better. Instant Divinity for the low price of literally die next turn. Upgraded it retains, which is definitely important to do. That way you can always play it when you can kill stuff with it. Biggest problem with Blasphemy is that you have to do a whole bunch of math to make sure that you are definitely going to kill everything on your turn so that you can play it. Brilliance. High base damage and scales with Mantra. Often not required, though. And an attack that has no secondary effect is a little bit sad for Watcher. So Brilliance is not as good as it might seem. That said, it's a great Act 1 card just for the high base damage. And it has really cool art, so there's that. Conjure Blade, also pretty cool art, and conceptually very awesome. Summoning a demon slaying blade. Bit hard to use this. There are some niche situations. I really like it with the Holy Water, where you can spend a bunch of energy up front to play this, and then you get the reusable multi-hit expunger. But in general, this card is awkward, because you have to pay a lot of energy up front, then draw and play the attack you created. It's not that good with something like Devaform, because you have to draw and play the Devaform, then wait several turns to get energy, then play the Conjure Blade, then draw the Expunger, then play the Expunger. It's too many steps, too many things that can go wrong, too many turns that you don't have. And so Conjure Blade usually ends up getting left in the dust by other Watcher strategies. Can be good with something like Deus Ex, though. This could be upfront energy. Very good card with Dead Branch. not bad burst energy otherwise. I don't mind splashing this into my deck usually, although you typically want some draw to take advantage of it. This card's okay, although I'm usually not happy about it. Form. Slow. This can be a way to scale. If you have lots of draw in your deck, then there might not be an upward cap on how much energy you can spend per turn. And so Deviform can be a true way to scale properly into your end game. That said, the upfront cost and the slowness of the scaling, as well as most decks having an upward cap on how much energy they can use, makes it pretty awkward. I don't usually like Deviform, but it's good with Snecko-Eye, it's good with Runic Pyramid, it's good with Fasting. It's funny with Unceasing Top, although I wouldn't necessarily say good. I usually rather have something like Devotion. Mantra every turn is pretty cool. This also makes energy for you, right? You pay energy one time, and then you get an unlimited amount of Mantra, which provides 3 energy when you enter Divinity. Quite good. I also think this is an okay first Mantra card, although I think it's a lot better if you have 1 Prostrate. As you even upgraded, it takes 4 turns after playing it for it to make you Divine on your own. It's not that good. Enlightenment. I don't like retain cards in general. Reducing their cost for the whole combat can be pretty strong, though. Noteworthy is that Establishment works with Meditate, which allows you to retain any other card, creating an effect where you can reduce the cost of any card in your deck, which allows you to build your own infinite combo, which is kind of cool. That said, the number of turns of setup required is often a bit much. Did I say Enlightenment? Yeah, I meant Establishment. Excuse me. This card. Does Pyramid work with this? No, unfortunately. Pyramid is legally distinct, although mechanically identical to Retain. Because reasons. Judgment. Actually pretty good in the early game. Kill an enemy with 30 or less health, upgraded 40 or less health. Noteworthy that this kills the baseball immediately. Yes, you can kill the heart if it's already damage capped too, which is fun, although not very useful. Also very good at picking off low health enemies in general. Slavers. Big shout out to this card for killing Reptomancer daggers and killing Gremlin Leader gremlins as well. So if you have a slow or setup heavy deck on Watcher that cannot kill minions easily, then this card is very good. So it does have some niche utility. I like Judgment a lot with Gremlin Horn too. Lesson learned. This card is ridiculous. You get to upgrade your whole deck for free. It's amazing. It's just amazing. It might not be as good as Feed. That's perhaps the worst thing I can say about Lesson learned. Master Reality. Very fun with Dead Branch. Not really a good card otherwise. It's very cool that this can upgrade cards from potions. Typically, you don't want to spend a rare card pick on this, or just a draw in general, but it has some use. It's intended to be used with all the Watcher cards that generate other cards, like Insights and Safeties and Smites and stuff, but it's just not that good. It's just not that good. But yeah, fun with Nilri's Codex, very fun with Dead Branch. Omniscience. The more I play Watcher, the higher my opinion of this card gets. 4 energy is a lot of energy, but playing a card of your choice from the draw pile twice is very strong. And this card gets ridiculous as you acquire more copies of it, allowing you to use one Omniscience to target another Omniscience and create a chain reaction. So I rate this card very highly on Watcher. I think it's one of the good Watcher rares, despite its cost. Great with Snecko-Eye, of course, but even just using your Miracle to play it can be very strong. Yeah, Omniscience into Omniscience and to play all your powers twice into you win the fight. And after you have one Omniscience, it's pretty easy to start picking up big, expensive, powerful cards like Ragnarok that are a good duplication target. Speaking of Ragnarok, this card slaps. Hits really hard. The random targeting is a bit awkward, but honestly, if you're playing this, you're probably killing everything on the field. Great with strength, great if you double it with omniscience, great with Snekawai, great with talk to the hand. There's often better rares to pick, but Ragnarok is very strong. It's just fun. But yeah, in terms of better rares, there's of course Scrawl. Upgraded, it's 0 cost, draw until your hand is full, which is ludicrous. Just a great card. Perhaps too OP. It's almost always correct to pick this card. Especially given that Watcher has so many ways to turn that draw then into energy. Yeah, Scrawl is nuts. Spirit Shield is probably the most medium of the Watcher rares. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just average. At default, in a 5-card hand, this blocks for 12 for 2 energy. Upgraded 16 for 2 energy. Very medium. The more cards you have in your hand, the better it gets, up to a maximum of 36 block for 2, which is pretty good. Great with Pyramid, great with lots of card draw or retain. Great with Snekawai. So yeah, lots of niche cases for Spirit Shield. Are there better rares? Definitely. One of them is Vault. Take another turn, that's OP. It just is. There's so many things that Vault does that it's ridiculous. Works really well the more relics you have that say do something each turn. Whether that be energy or damage every turn from something like Hourglass. It even resets the counter on Velvet Choker because you get a new turn. Ridiculous. Yeah, Time Warp was banned for a reason. Turn is the most valuable resource in the game. And this gives you another one. It's too good. It's too good. Lastly but not leastly, Wish. My opinion on Wish has fallen a bit these days. You can stack gold with it, which is very nice, but it's very expensive, so it's hard to do that without taking damage. And oftentimes, you'd rather just not have the Wish in the first place. The strength behind this card is its flexibility. You get block or strength or money. Ideally, in most fights, you're taking the money. Then in boss fights, you're taking the strength. Sometimes you want the armor. To answer your question, J.A., do you want the armor sometimes? I'd say most often against Awakened one, you would want plated armor. But there are some other situations. Russ Glimmer says, I keep getting Wish, then I can't play it without potentially sacrificing the longevity of the run. Yeah, that's why I'd rather just skip the Wish, usually. You get long-term value, but you have to sacrifice to get it, and then it doesn't work in the way you want it to. But yeah, if you can play it for free, like with Omniscience, it can be really good, right? You can just Omniscience Wish every fight. If you have Career, then it's a lot better. But yeah, it can definitely be dead weight. So, those are the cards of the Watcher and kind of our basic philosophy to picking them. Let's see if we can put that into practice in a Watcher run. I'm ready to play.
If you enjoyed that video, watch this one next. And don't forget to follow on Twitch to watch the content live. Click the link in the description below.